You think the ocean floor is just sand and coral, but if you step wrong, the ground itself will snap your leg in half. Bobbit Worm. The bobbit worm is not an animal. It is a subterranean bear trap made of meat. Buried deep within the sediment of the Indo-Pacific, this polychaete predator waits with the patience of a sniper, leaving only 5 antennas exposed to the current. It relies on a tactical ambush strategy that hasn't changed in millions of years, because it doesn't have to. When a fish brushes against those antennas, the reaction is instantaneous. The worm inverts its pharynx, turning its throat inside out like a biological sleeve, and strikes with such velocity that it can slice a fish cleanly in two. We're talking about jaw strength, capable of snapping coral stems and delivering enough pressure to crush a femur. This is trench warfare at its finest. The enemy never sees the soldier, only the flash of the blade. Once the jaws lock, the victim is dragged underground into the worm's fortified bunker. There is no escape, no struggle, and usually no trace left behind. It is the perfect crime committed by a 3-meter-long assassin that looks like an iridescent nightmare. But while the bobbit worm relies on brute mechanical force to secure a meal, the next predator on our list utilizes a weapon system that belongs in a chemical warfare lab. Ribbon worm. The ribbon worm, or Nemertea, looks like a harmless strip of wet lasagna, but inside it houses a pressurized ballistic system that defies physics. Instead of jaws, this creature hides a proboscis, a distinct muscular structure independent of its digestive tract, stored in a fluid-filled cavity above its gut. It is essentially a loaded gun waiting for a trigger pull. When it attacks, the worm contracts its muscles, forcing fluid into the cavity and launching the proboscis out of its face like an inverted rubber glove. This isn't a gentle poke. It is a sticky, branching net that wraps around the prey, instantly suffocating it. Some species upgrade this arsenal with a stylet, a calcified spike that stabs the victim and injects a potent neurotoxin. It is a masterpiece of biological plumbing. The prey is paralyzed, liquefied, and absorbed. The ribbon worm doesn't need to be strong because it turns its environment into a toxic hazard zone. However, this weapon is retractable. Our next subject wears its arsenal on the outside, turning its entire body into a "do not touch" sign, written in agony. Bearded Fireworm. The bearded fireworm is a slow-moving, flamboyant, disastrous event waiting to happen. Found patrolling the reefs of the Atlantic and Mediterranean, it looks like a fuzzy caterpillar that got lost at sea. But do not let the aesthetics fool you. This is a defensive fortress. Those white tufts lining its sides are not fur. They are hollow, brittle bristles called chaetae, filled with a potent neurotoxin. Think of them as thousands of hypodermic needles made of fiberglass. The moment you brush against them, the bristles snap off in your skin, leaking venom directly into the wound. The pain is not merely irritating. It is a burning sensation comparable to holding your hand over an open flame, lasting for hours or even days. This is a scorched earth policy in animal form. The fireworm doesn't need to hide or run. It simply exists as a biological hazard that demands respect. It punishes physical contact with chemical burns. But pain is just a warning system. The next creature doesn't want to hurt you. It wants to own you, bankrupt your body, and drive you to suicide. Horsehair worm. The horsehair worm is the worst tenant in the history of existence. As larvae, they infiltrate an insect or crustacean host, settling into the body cavity like a squatter in a foreclosed home. They absorb nutrients directly through their skin, growing inches long while coiled tight inside a host barely the size of a cricket. It is a biological audit where the host pays 100% of the tax. But the real horror begins when the worm reaches maturity. It needs water to breed, but its host usually lives on land. So the worm hijacks the host's central nervous system. It chemically manipulates the victim's brain, forcing the insect to seek out water and dive in. A suicidal act driven by the parasite's need to relocate. Once the host hits the water, the horsehair worm erupts from the body, often exiting through the rear, leaving the hollowed-out husk of its landlord behind to drown. It is a brutal eviction, where the tenant burns the house down on the way out. Yet, this damage is limited to a single bug. The next worm operates on an industrial scale, toppling empires and sinking navies. Shipworm. The shipworm is not technically a worm. It is a bivalve mollusk with an identity crisis and a hunger for infrastructure. Known as the termite of the sea, this creature possesses a specialized shell modified into a drilling unit capable of boring through solid oak. Throughout history, this animal has caused more financial ruin than most wars. They infested the wooden hulls of exploration ships, turning the sturdy foundations of the British Navy into Swiss cheese. They caused the collapse of wharves and dikes in the Netherlands, triggering panic and economic bankruptcy across coastlines. They eat the wood, digest the cellulose with the help of symbiotic bacteria, and leave nothing but structural failure in their wake. The shipworm is an agent of entropy, dismantling human ambition one bite at a time. It hides its destruction inside the wood, invisible until the pier collapses. But while the shipworm hides to destroy, the next worm hides to deceive, wearing a coat of armor that looks like a disco ball. Sea mouse. The sea mouse looks like a hairy tuber wrapped in a rainbow, but it is actually a master of optical engineering. Found in the muddy depths of the North Atlantic, this polychaete is covered in a dense mat of felt-like bristles, but the spines on its back are structurally designed to manipulate light with the precision of a fiber optic cable. These spines are photonic crystals. They reflect light with nearly 100% efficiency, creating an iridescent shine that rivals the most expensive jewelry. Scientists are studying this worm to improve communication technology, yet the animal itself lives in the dark, sifting through muck for dead matter. It is a scavenger, dressed in royal silk. It is a visual lie, a muddy scavenger posing as a treasure. But while the sea mouse plays tricks with light, our next subject breaks the fundamental rules of biology entirely. It has no mouth, no stomach, and lives where life should be impossible. Giant tube worm. The giant tube worm, Riftia pachyptilla, is not an animal. It is a standalone industrial processing plant. Located along the hydrothermal vents of the Pacific Ring of Fire, these creatures grow up to 8 feet tall, anchored to the smoking chimneys of the ocean floor. Here is the glitch. They have no digestive tract, no mouth to eat, no gut to process. Instead, they rely on a massive colony of symbiotic bacteria living inside a specialized organ called the trophosome. The worm absorbs toxic hydrogen sulfide, lethal to almost everything else, and feeds it to the bacteria. The bacteria, in turn, convert this chemical waste into sugar and energy. It is the ultimate waste management system. They thrive in crushing pressure and total darkness, building an empire on the fumes of the Earth's core. But even the giant tube worm keeps its distance from the vent's hottest exit points. The final creature on our list climbs directly into the fire. Pompeii Worm. The Pompeii Worm is the most extreme tenant on the planet. It builds its paper-like tube colonies directly on the walls of, quote, black smoker chimneys, where water temperatures spike to 80 degrees Celsius. It is the most heat-tolerant animal known to science, living in a constant state of thermal siege. Its tail sits in water hot enough to cook protein, while its head pokes out into the cooler currents to breathe. To survive this thermal schizophrenia, the worm wears a fleece of bacteria on its back that acts as biological insulation, likely detoxifying the heavy metals spewing from the vent. It lives on the edge of a volcanic eruption, capitalizing on real estate that would boil anything else alive. From the bone-crushing jaws of the Bobbit to the heat-proof armor of the Pompeii, these worms prove that the ocean floor isn't a habitat, it's a battlefield, and we are just tourists.